The worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is...
John C. Myers.
And we're a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in popular and not so popular horror franchises. And today we're doing our wrap up of the Psycho series. So we've watched part 1 through 4 and the remake. Did we do Bud Court dirty by not doing the 1987 straight to TV thing found on YouTube? Maybe we did.
Probably.
Do you have any remorse about not watching that?
Not really. I mean, like, I just remember, I think the only thing that I am curious about, I think I already know the answer.
Yep.
Is that whether it would still scare me as bad. Because I remember seeing it on TV when I was 7 and enjoying it, but then being completely freaked out by some of it. And I'm going to guess that the answer is absolutely yes. I'm still terrified of Bud Court.
Bud Court, yeah. Makes sense. We all are.
No, I think it's supposed to be a lot sillier. I believe it's more zany.
Okay, yeah. Maybe that's a feature bonus episode or something like that, because I did start to realize that we were like running out of time on Psycho, somehow running out of time, and realizing like, oh God, we didn't do that. And I will say the Bates Motel TV series seems to be universally loved.
Yes. Like
people comment on that on Instagram. I see that all over the place, that people like really, really dig that show. And maybe I'm just a little bit of, kind of exhausted of the Norman and Norma story right now. Mm-hmm. Like I just need to put it down for a little bit, but it does seem like something I think I would go back to at some point and check out if I wanted a TV series to watch. Yeah. But I've seen zero of that.
Yeah, it's wild. Like I know that from what I understand, there is like an older brother kind of situation. Okay. There's I think when they get to the Marion Crane story, that Rihanna is Marion Crane, which is okay. Oh, that's wild. Oh, Business, Thora Birch is in it. Keegan Connor Tracy, looking at the cast list.
Business, Thora Birch.
From Final Destination 2. Yeah. But I'm absolutely curious. It's just I'm kind of with you, and we can get into it when we talk about the wrap up. But it's like this story I'm ready to kind of set aside because it's always just this story.
Yeah,
that's not a bad thing, but it is like I'm good with it for the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always the motel. Like when we talk about settings, like we don't even have to make the joke again of, it's not Norman going to space or hell or anything like that. It's just
he didn't go anywhere.
He's stuck at the motel.
He went somewhere in 4. We don't know. We went to that nice house in 4.
Sure.
But
yeah.
But it is funny. We're mentioning real quick that watching the remake, I had texted James in the middle of it that I'm like, I just put together.
Oh, yeah.
When he's telling Marion Crane that it's raining, it's like, well, you can go down the road. There's a diner about 10 miles down the road. And it's like, wait a minute. That's the diner he works at.
Yeah, there you go.
I can't believe I missed that. But yeah, no, it's all very contained in that area.
So are you saying that Gus Van Sant's remake did shed some light on Psycho for you?
It did, yeah.
Just the diner.
It added a whole new layer. Yeah. Canonically, it made some differences.
Yeah, it's... This series does just stay put for the most part. I'm not saying that I would have been okay with that for another 4 movies.
He would need to have gone Hawaiian at least once.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and then you do your Back to the Basics sequel eventually too.
Mm-hmm. Coming back.
But it's, just like, Jason stuck around Crystal Lake almost the entire time until he went to Manhattan.
Yeah.
And even that, he was just Jason on a boat, really. Jason Goes to Hell, he was still in Crystal Lake the entire time. So, you can still have these characters at the same place, but, I'm not sure what difference we would have needed for this series.
Since you have its lead is, for better or worse, a human being.
Yeah.
It's not some archon of evil or something like that. You're focused a little bit more on the delicacy and the emotional well-being of this guy, whereas, for Saw is much more about the traps and all this other stuff and the plot machinations. And so you're just like watching this guy's journey, and it's kind of like, there's only so much you can do with that to have him be like, no, I'm not over it yet. I'm still doing it. And I thought this was different enough in it that it still worked for me pretty much overall. And I think a huge part of that is Anthony Perkins.
Yeah.
Like, he does a fantastic job of this character.
He does a fantastic job of the character, but then also, I'll go right to it. I enjoyed part 3 for as trashy and weird as it was. Now, granted, this is where you like pull out a clip from me of our part 3 review, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know about this or something like that. But like, this is how these things kind of mush together in your brain just a little bit. And now I'm thinking of part 3 in a pretty positive light of being just that weird, gross other side to this, because the first 2 are pretty elegant movies, for lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. And then part 3 goes kind of gross, and then part 4 takes the grossness like to a different kind of level, I think. But Anthony Perkins not only played the role, but then he directed part 3. So Psycho is just so much his baby. Yeah,
well, and I mentioned on the last episode that Queer for Fear show, Oz Perkins on there talking about it, and was talking about how, like, so basically with Anthony Perkins, like, he was sort of like a lot of gay men at the time, deeply closeted. He attributes like the scene with him and Sam in the hotel is like Anthony Perkins versus Anthony Perkins. Okay. Like this constructed Anthony Perkins, like, I'm a manly man. And that audiences saw that, and so he couldn't get roles after that anymore, because they were like too much like, no, he's this weirdo Norman Bates guy. There's something queer about him. Mm-hmm. We, in whatever sense you want to take that, we're not so sure. And so it really, like, it screwed up his career for a while. And so coming back to it and owning that was an interesting move. And then in 3, Oz Perkins referred to 3 as like, what if a grown-up Norman Bates made a movie about Norman Bates?
That's a fun way to put it.
It's much sleazier. Whatever weird sex hang-ups he's got is on display there. Like, it is clear he's so much more interested in Jeff Fahey's body than anyone else. And like it's very, and I mean, I get it.
Sure.
Like, when you watch the movie, you're like, I get it, man.
With that,
good picks. Yeah, just wave them around. And that it is so just built around this guy. Like, not even just, as if we get into Freddy and stuff like that, the Robert Englund's performance, and like, we love Andrew Divoff as the Wishmaster, but like, Anthony Perkins is so tied to this role, to this iconic role, and just has to anchor all of this. And he does, and they do different things with him in each movie, and with differing successes, but like 2 and 3, amazing. 4, he's doing he's doing with what they gave him, I mean, a lot of this, it really kicked off enjoying the series when I really loved part 2 more than I thought I would. Yeah. And granted, so many people said, oh, part 2 is fantastic. And it's not that I didn't believe them. I just hadn't seen it is all. But like, when part 2 really, really worked for me, I was just like, oh man, what are we in for? Because we're kind of used to these franchises, like, varying degrees of quality. But granted, I'm a pretty easy to please horror fan, but I enjoyed each one of these. Like, there was not one where I was just so like kind of bored with or anything like that. Even the remake, like, I found something to chew on, so. I mean, I would say probably my least favorite is 4.
Same.
But even still, like, I found stuff to enjoy about that. Like, I none of these should be good. None of them.
Yes.
They're all decent. Like, 2 and 3 particularly, like, I really liked, but yeah, it's just, I was so blown away by that. It wasn't even just like, we did Final Destination. It's like, oh, these are actually like more fun than I thought. I'm having a great time with this.
And I loved that 2 and 3 were so wildly different. I love that part 2 is a kind of a serious quality, like, they're going for some sort of A-list type of movie. And then part 3 is just going for the sleaze. And hey, as the internet says, inside me are 2 wolves, and one Psycho 2 and one Psycho 3, and I love both of them. I'll take them both on varying levels.
I got a couple Psychos in me, 2 and 3. Yeah, I mean, like, it is like, it's as long as you can kind of get it in your head that, like, these aren't ever going to be the first one, even the remake. But that's the point of the remake, as we talked about. But like, they're really fun, and I was really, really surprised by that. And they all have their own voice, but like, they're, as I said, they're all anchored by Anthony Perkins, who's I want to watch more stuff with him in it now. Yeah, just because I'm very taken by his performances.
What do you think Hitchcock would think of these sequels? And I raised that a little bit in the previous episode, but what I like to think about is, just to refresh, is that for as much as we make Hitchcock out to be this like sophisticated man, and he was definitely, he loved the lurid trash like more than most people at that time did. And Psycho was pretty trashy when it was released. So I like to think of him chuckling to himself when he sees all of these other films. I guess as a two-part thought is that, like, one, he's dead and long gone. So what does the original author have authorship over the sequels? But also, like...
And if he was so great, why is he dead now?
Yeah, if he's so great, how come he's dead?
Think about that.
But then also, especially with part 3, as these movies got a little bit more lurid, I think he would dig it. You know, I really do.
I would guess. I mean, this is all just.
Sure.
I'm not going to claim to think what he's, but I think he would appreciate that 2 at least kept the toying with the audience.
There you go.
In there a bit more than 3, but he might just be super excited that movies look that good in color and they were boobs. I have no idea.
Yeah, and then part 3 getting trashier. Like, I'd like to believe that he would like some of the giallo stuff because I don't know, in my made up headcanon, like. If Hitch would have been making movies up till like 1983, he might have looked at the giallo movies and just said, like, you know what? That's my next one. Like, how do I make a giallo film really sophisticated and elegant?
Well, it's like, I mean, so many of these things like feed into each other because you have, like Hitchcock influencing all these other filmmakers, and then the German crime films influencing giallo, and then giallo like also taking stuff from Hitchcock and all that kind of like melding together. Oh, I'm more interested, like, what would you think of Brian De Palma?
Right.
But I remember, I don't. When did he die? When did Hitchcock die?
I want to say like 74, 76, because he kept making movies up until about 72.
1980.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd be interested to see like, what would he think of Body Double?
Right.
That kind of thing. Yeah. Because that is definitely like that, like you said, like that is a combination of Alfred Hitchcock and incredible sleaze. So in the same way. So yeah, it's like, what if we applied Psycho 3 to Hitchcock? You get Body Double.
Right. Yeah, I like to think of him enjoying these sequels on his own merits. I'm sure he would have some biting criticism as he should have a nice soundbite.
Right.
Ew, I just thought about Hitchcock on Twitter for some reason. But no. Yeah, I think he would dig all of these and all their different permutations. Like, I think he would even kind of like chuckle at Gus Van Sant's version. His daughter went on, said in an interview that he would be flattered, if nothing else. And he was an egomaniac.
Yeah, I mean, like, he remade his own movies, and I think that's probably part of it too. Is that if we talked a lot in the last one about how it is a conversation with the other one and how showing how great the other one is that he would probably be like, yep, I got that. Yeah, he knows how good I am.
Right. Did you have a favorite kill in the series? This is a little bit different.
It's a little bit different because, like, I was randomly thinking about Robert Loggia falling on the knife earlier this week, and like two probably for me. I mean, obviously, it's hard because like you have the iconic kills of one that are fantastic in their own way, or whatever. But just like for my own personal taste, the Robert Loggia falling and then falling on the knife, and then Vera Miles just getting the knife through the head, like twos, because they were so shocking in 2. Like it was like this wrapped up like this emotional drama, and then all of a sudden someone just falls on a knife. Ridiculous. I mean, even Miss Spool just getting clonked with a shovel was.
Oh God, yeah, I forgot about
beautiful.
that. Yeah, I would agree. Loggia falling on the knife is so good, and I do think about that. But the weird thing is, and you'll have to refresh my memory, but I kept thinking of my favorite kill. What would it be for part 3? But I just kept thinking of the ice machine scene for part 3.
Yes.
And to me, that is like, when I think of Psycho 3, I will think of the ice machine. And I will think of it. That's the luridness, that's the sleaze, that's the grossness. And whoever's body was in there at the time, that I can't remember who it was, that he stashed in there.
Yeah, it was Kat Shea as Patsy Boyle. The toilet kill, he then puts her on the... on that.
So let's double it up then. We've got the toilet kill with Patsy, then into an ice machine where then the police officer takes the ice and puts it in his mouth on a hot day. So that's the That's the sleaze that I want out of part 3, mixed with the shock of Robert Loggia falling on the knife in part 2. So
yeah, I think those were my favorites.
And part 3 also has the very giallo telephone booth sequence as well.
Yes, very, very, yeah. 'Cause, yeah, like, I mean, just even thinking about part 4, like, part 4 was so, like, not even, like, really about that.
Right.
It was just really about Norma and Norman. And so, like, all I'm thinking about is just, there was,
some
I mean, like, and some harrowing kills where, you know, the woman he strangles.
Oh, yeah.
That's not, like, that was uncomfortable to watch. Like, that was interesting. These aren't full on slasher movies.
Right.
So, I don't have that. But 2 had that mix of, like, popcorn fun and, like, still being very, very engaged. So I think that might be, not discounting the first one, might be my favorite.
Sure. And it's so hard to talk about these. Well, it's not hard, but it's just like, yeah, everybody knows the first Psycho is amazing. Like, yeah. It's just like
they're all in the shadow of the first one. We know it's established.
Yeah. Which makes it easy enough.
We've shown you can't top it.
Yeah, very specifically, you can't top it.
Yeah.
So
there's evidence.
I mean, I'm sure we will breeze by this question, but like, what order would you watch these in again? It's chronological, right?
Oh man. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I'm more likely to just, if I was just gonna like throw something on, I'd more likely like just throw on 2.
Okay. Yeah.
Or, I mean, there's an argument for 3 too, with just like, because it's sort of just sleazy, whatever. But
3 is like the more party favor movie.
Yeah.
Like if I was watching it with a group of friends, I would say part 3.
But like, I mean, because 1 is one I'd want to sit down and watch, and I mean, like all these you should sit down and watch. But I just mean like really devote, like study good stuff. But just like I just like run across, I'm just scrolling through Netflix or whatever. I'm like, I don't know. Oh, Psycho 2, yeah,
right, yeah, for sure. It's kind of like what we were saying earlier. Like, I don't know how much more you could have wrung out of this series. So I am glad that it's done. I'm glad that and I'm, again, like I was saying during part 4, like I'm not generally a fan of prequels because I don't need nor want to know backstory most of the time. I like mystery.
Right.
I also know that like certain characters just can't die. The stakes are lower. I know people love the Bates Motel series, but I'm also just like, well, I don't know where else you can go forward with this story. And I don't think I need to see Psycho 5.
Right. Seed of Norman.
Right.
Yeah.
Would I go see it in the theater the day it was released? Of course I would.
Yeah.
But I'm part of the problem. We have established this.
Yeah.
So
I can't pretend otherwise. Well, I texted James last night. I saw an ad for Saw. They're like, Amanda's back. And I was like, Amanda's back? I'm like, God damn it. I'm going to go see this.
Yeah. Yep. And we will.
Oh, you got to put that in the schedule. Emergency podcast.
Yes. But yeah, it's just like, I don't know what else they would do because there's at the end of part 4, he's free now, which
he's
3 had the creepy hand, which worked a little bit better, but there's only so many times you can send him to the asylum and then he gets out for some reason. This isn't Gotham City, for Christ's sake. So
yes, and I think like 4 was able to kind of like skirt that by being like, no, we're forgetting 2 and 3. It's just we did the legacy sequel thing, and like you'd almost have to do that again if you're going to. But I don't want them to.
Wouldn't it be amazing if they did the legacy sequel to Gus Van Sant's Psycho and not
yes.
So Vince Vaughn comes back as he is now and plays Norman, old Norman. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he has to join a frat. Yes. And get a dodgeball team together. And not even just that they wrapped it up rather patly at the end of 4, but just like they got everything that I think they're going to out of this as far as like moving forward. Because I think the concept of Norman being freaked out by nature versus nurture, by sort of denying that like the mother was the problem, it's really just the genes, that's it. That's like an interesting battle in his head, but I don't need that to play out necessarily. Like I don't need like his watching him with a kid, I think would just be uncomfortable for the whole time.
Good call. I don't want to. not interested in that.
I mean, like, that would be horror. That would be something, but I just don't necessarily know that I want to see it. I'm fine with his character existing and then just riding off in the sunset. So
I can't think of a storyline that I would care to watch with him at this point. I was thinking about this too while we were watching the remake, but just thinking, like, what if Gus Van Sant had done Psycho 5 and not a Psycho remake?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm trying to, like, think of what he would have brought to it if he would have, there again, though, that I'm just, like, kiboshing what I just said. Like, I don't need to see any more. But I'm just trying to think of somebody who's that skilled.
Right.
What he would bring, because obviously he loves Psycho. Would he have made the legacy sequel Psycho 2? With Vince Vaughn, like, how would he have moved the story forward? I wonder. There's part of me, and it's not up to me to tell a gay filmmaker to gay it up in a movie, but I'm just like with characters that have already these themes going on that we in our discussions haven't really touched on that much, which is fair, I think, but like what would Gus Van Sant have brought to Norman Bates? There's a little bit of a drag element to it and like that kind of thing. Like, he didn't really tackle any of that in his remake at all.
No, now that you mention it, that's, we didn't really talk about that, but that's an interesting thing for having, obviously you have a queer actor and his whole experience with it. And like we talked about that sort of informing his career. That is interesting that I mean, is it the responsibility of a gay queer filmmaker to be like only tell those stories and that's it, But it is surprising that like I not surprising, but like it is interesting that he went like, well, I'm not so much interested in that. Is what about Viggo Mortensen's butt? How about we, fine. I'd say that's one way to go about it. Not complaining. But it is, that is interesting that was kind of like left by the wayside. But although I guess if you are trying to do like a shot for shot remake that you're constrained by that. And you're like, well, he already told that story. What if I went a little bit different?
And I wonder if in 1998 he would have had the authority and permission by the studio system to make something a little bit more queer centric.
Yeah.
As a remake. With something so beloved as Psycho. That's hard to say, but I would have been interested in seeing like what he would have done with that element of the story. Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of room for that, but I'm certainly not the writer for that.
Yeah. I'm just imagining the way Hollywood works is that like he has this idea for a more queer Psycho, and they're on board with it. They're like, well, let's just we'll put our team on it and we'll kind of finagle it up. Next thing you know, it's like big shower party, and it's like this gay panic movie starring Jamie Kennedy as this guy who owns a shower that dudes keep coming into or something. Exactly. Like I don't know. I just see it just spiraling out of control and turning into something
like Freddy Part 2.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I was just thinking about that in the week after watching the remake of just like what that element could have been brought to it. But, again, like you said,
no, that's interesting,
it's not his responsibility to only talk about those issues either. So,
right. Talking about like the remix like that, there was the thing that just came out recently about that awful Zaslav guy, the head of Warner Brothers, that was like talking about like we're not doing anything with Harry Potter. We're not doing anything with this, like these IPs, which I just hate that term so much, that they're just like these are products we need to just ship out there, and that like you're waiting for that kind of thing, like, well, let's do another Psycho, looking at the numbers, we could do that you're just gonna get this crap churned out. And I'm kind of glad it didn't suffer from that, because that's what I was worried about with those other ones, that it was just like, well, it's a recognizable name, whatever, but they actually ended up being decent films.
Exactly.
I think it's probably in this case, I think it's best just let it just be those four. We've talked in other ones about like, well, you could pick this back up. Like, I'd totally watch another Friday the 13th. I'd totally watch another Silent Night, Deadly Night. Like, almost all of these, I would watch another one of. Psycho's
done.
Like, put it away. The remake is the remake. Henry Thomas did a perfectly good job in 4, but like Anthony Perkins has gone to bed. You can't do it.
All set. Yeah. I mean, does that set us for the wrap up? I mean, like, there's not much more to say about him as a whole. I think they're a nice, taut 4.5 movies.
Yeah,
and that's kind of it. and I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it we talked about in the remake, just sort of about Psycho, in general. It is interesting. It is a kind of this idealized version that you kept it true to the story. Things kind of changed, but the movies were largely the same. Unlike, we talked about like with Jason that you have, yes, it's Jason in Crystal Lake, but you have these wildly different takes on it. You have Carl Biegler's much more sort of, neutered, but bloody take. You have Tom McLaughlin's Part 6, which is much more gothic and whatever. And they managed to keep these all like we said, like they get, Perkins' own version gets a little sleazy or whatever, but they're still
right.
They're not too wildly different. They're all kind of like have a similar tone and appreciation of realism, even though things get a little hyper real when the sheriff is eating blood and not knowing. It doesn't give you the elbow room, I think, to get too weird with it. Or at least I wouldn't want that. I'm happy with it staying in the world that it is. That's not something that we've seen yet, I think, in what we've watched so far. Because, Phantasm is weird from the jump, and it's only going to get weirder. Course. Yeah, everything else kind of will thematically get a little different, or and Wishmaster does whatever Wishmaster does. But this one is it is a boyhood of Anthony Perkins murdering, and I enjoyed that.
But I am thinking about, though, and I'm trying to think of another version of this where there's Psycho, and then obviously we haven't covered it yet, but I'm trying to think of movies that the first one is held in such high regard, and then the other ones are just kind of all over the place. And the only one that I can think of that is close enough to Psycho would be Halloween.
Yeah.
Because I really do feel like John Carpenter's first Halloween movie is closest to Psycho. I mean, I adore Nightmare on Elm Street, but that's wackier and supernatural and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The first Halloween was trying to be like a real well-made slasher film. It gets pretty nutty by part 2 and definitely by 4 and, going on.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to kind of find another franchise that has that kind of, and I am not going to call it elevated because I refuse to, but I'm just,
right.
but it does have a little bit of a higher craftsmanship. It has a higher kind of you take it more seriously. I am not going to be taking Halloween 5 seriously when we get around to watching it. I'm sorry, but that's just not the way it is. However, Halloween, the first one, is still, I saw it in the theater last year at the Hollywood, I think. And I was still gripped by that movie.
Yeah.
Even if we're so used to it, and I'm still finding little bits that it might be kind of funny and goofy, just like I might with Psycho. But I kind of feel like Halloween and Psycho are the closest to each other as far as being that kind of sophisticated movie that then kind of goes off the rails after a while.
And it's a credit to Halloween that the last time I saw it in the theater, I had one of the most bizarre theater going experiences I've had in a while. And I was like, fuck, is this going to be what I think of when I think of Halloween now? And no, I can still down and watch the movie, and it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's that good. But we'll talk about that when we talk about Halloween. But yeah, no, I mean, this is one of those where it's like there's a prestige, which is the first one. And and like I said, there's no reason these sequels should be any good at all. But they, as long as you can go, they're not trying to be the first one, and you need to be okay with that. And I'm glad they aren't trying to be the first one. But yeah, I think that's a good question, and maybe something that we'll find out as we go on. Granted, well, I mean, certainly not good, but we do have 15 other Amityville horror movies.
Sure. I mean, there you go.
But I mean, that one's or The Exorcist might be a good example. Where there's that first one was such high regard, and then 2 was definitely no thanks, for a lot of people, but.
Maybe Chainsaw, but that still feels a little bit different than Psycho.
Yeah. Because because a lot of those are they're horror. You know what I mean? So they're good for horror movies, but Psycho is treated as American cinema.
Yeah.
So it's they let their guard down and actually admitted that these movies are worth watching. Tough to compare.
Yeah.
Watch all of them. There's not a single one where I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. Well, including the remake.
Watch it.
I will likely revisit the remake at some point, just because I think there's even more to be mined from there. It's fascinating. I almost wanted to do. People have done this where they'll play them side by side,
did it.
And then you see yeah, then you see what's different and how, because that's, as I mentioned, the remake is actually shorter, but just, I don't know, just seeing that kind of stuff is interesting to me.
For sure. So, yeah, watch them all. And I think that's going to do it for this short Psycho wrap up. One thing I would like to draw everybody's attention to is James Gannon's illustrations for each of these films that I've been posting on Instagram. So if you don't follow us on Instagram, just check us out over there on This May Hurt a Bit Pod. My good buddy and filmmaker, James Gannon from New York, has been drawing an illustration from one still from each of these films, and they are fantastic. He did them just for
thank you so much, James.
So check them out. So you can follow all of his work. He is a filmmaker out of New York. I work with him a ton on different stuff, and he's always up to something interesting. Right now, I think he's in Mexico for his birthday, but I'm sure as soon as he gets back, he will be. Actually, today is his birthday, so happy birthday, James Gannon.
Happy birthday, James. And that's plenty interesting, being in Mexico for your birthday. There you go.
So, check out his work over there, and let us know which of those illustrations you like best. I got to go with the first or second one, even though I love them all. There's something about that first one that was just so incredible to me, and I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, I knew he was a good illustrator, but then when he sent me that, I was pretty floored by it.
Yeah.
So.
No, I'm furious about it. Don't be good at two things. That sucks. Exactly. No, they're all great. Thank you so much.
I think that's gonna do it for us. So, what's going on over at John Alex Hate Stuff?
John Alex Hate Stuff. We're actually getting into the horror season over there. We're gonna be checking out Skinamarink.
Oh my goodness.
Which is one that I've seen before and enjoyed. Alex has not watched it yet, and so he'll either hate it or I'll break him. Yeah. So I'm excited to see how that plays out. There you go.
And if you are really into the Halloween season, go over and check out some short original stories at Please Leave, fully produced short horror stories. But more importantly, next week, we go into the swamp and check out Pumpkinhead. I'm very excited to get some creatures into my eyeballs.
Yep.
As you had mentioned when we were kind of going back and forth on what to watch next, it's just like, these last two are based in reality. Let's get some monsters going. Let's get some magic. Yeah. So I'm very excited to check out some Pumpkinhead. I've only seen the first one. There's 4 of them. Everybody get to some Pumpkinhead. We're going to be releasing these once a week during Halloween season, of course, and probably a couple of extra bonus episodes that we're still trying to parse out. And I don't want to overpromise too, because, there's a lot of Halloween stuff to do this year.
Pumpkinhead's a Stan Winston thing.
Stan Winston joint.
Yeah.
He directed one other film, I believe. Do you know which one that is?
Of course. Everyone knows it's A Gnome Named Norm.
Yeah.
The classic.
Yeah, which came out after Pumpkinhead. They started shooting A Gnome Named Norm while getting ready to release Pumpkinhead. So he had that magic in-between realm of getting something greenlit.
Wow.
I had to check that out after our movie night that we do a lot of Friday nights. Someone submitted that. So went down the rabbit hole of checking that out. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a Stan Winston month with jumping right into Pumpkinhead. Yeah. So, yeah.
We'll cover Gnome Named Norm in a bonus episode. Because the America wants to know.
To know what we think.
They need to know.
They need to know. All right, everyone. So happy Halloween. This should come out right as October is starting, and we're going to be pumped to watch Pumpkinhead series. And I know John and I are going to be watching a ton of other Halloween-oriented films, and hopefully we can chime in at some point and let us know, let you know what we're watching, and please do let us know what you're watching. Go ahead and comment on the Instagram post. Maybe I'll try to work out something where it's just like one post where everybody can kind of like chime in on what they're watching, and we can all kind of chat about what you're doing over there with your October, which should be watching even more horror movies than normal. So,
dang right.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next week for Pumpkinhead, and until then, good night.
Good night.
This has been a Two Penguins media production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at This May Hurt a Bit Pod and on Twitter at Hurt a Bit. email us at thismayhurtabit@gmail.com. And if you are so inclined, rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.